Microsoft has taken some real shots at the FTC subsequent to the FTC coming out and saying that they're going to take this case to court. And the FTC actually responded with shots fired back. So this is very interesting. It's absolutely going to court. And I'm going to cover exactly what was said and what my opinion is on this whole transaction. And so as you guys smash that like button, let me run that intro. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. You guys already know, and if you don't by now, full disclosure, I am betting on this Activision transaction. I own an options position in the Activision transaction, and if it closes, you know, I make a substantial amount of money. And so I'm biased as hell in hoping that the Activision deal gets done. And what exactly is that deal for those of you who are sort of like new to this opportunity? Well, earlier in the year, Microsoft actually offered to purchase Activision for $95 per share, which is a 25% upside to the current share price, and Activision approved it. And so Microsoft is capitalized to make this acquisition. Activision wants it to happen, and the only thing stopping this transaction from going through is the FTC, which is alleging that it will harm competition, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And so here's Microsoft's response to the FTC saying that this will harm competition. So Microsoft is saying that, of course, they're going to oppose the claims that the transaction would harm competition in the video game industry. And, you know, I think if you're going to say that it's going to harm competition in the video game industry, you have to say why. Now, the FTC made some vague accusations. They said that they could raise prices or they could degrade the quality on other platforms. None of that makes sense, especially for Call of Duty, because, you know, as I learned, look, I purposely never bought Call of Duty. I'm a gamer. I'm a big gamer, but I purposely never bought Call of Duty because I know that I would get addicted to playing that game. I was a huge GoldenEye fan when I was, you know, younger. 1997 is when GoldenEye came out, 98 maybe, and I played that thing nonstop. But if you had the functions and features of what Call of Duty has today, for example, you can play with people across platforms, including PC, which I didn't know about, it would mean that I would get totally sucked into this. I would be addicted to playing Call of Duty. And so that's why I just don't purchase it. But what that also tells you is that if you own Activision, it makes no sense for you to make it an exclusive on Xbox or anything, because what you have is a community flywheel here now. So as more sort of communities join into those sort of like this Activision environment, you're getting all these players coming in and playing from all these sort of systems. And so what you've created is a consumer monopoly. It's incredibly valuable. Now, people could say that you could potentially raise the price. I understand, because there's such a large consumer monopoly, that you could potentially raise the price. So the FTC does have an argument there, but the FTC does not have an argument where Sony is saying that, you know, they're going to take it away from the Sony platform. I do not see that happening. But let's take a second and get into further of what the FTC is actually alleging here. So first, let's start with Microsoft. So they actually filed a rebuttal to the FTC lawsuit, and effectively what they're doing is they said that Xbox wants to grow its presence in mobile gaming. Now remember, Tencent is actually the leader globally in mobile gaming, and so this is Xbox's way of challenging Tencent. And, you know, 3/4 of Activision's gamers and more than 1/3 of its revenues come from mobile offerings. Okay, so that's fine, but more than 1/3 means that 2/3 of its revenues come from non-mobile offerings. So careful of the wording. And so Xbox also believes that it's good business to make Activision's limited portfolio of popular games more accessible, so not less, to consumers by putting them, you know, on more platforms and making them more affordable. And so I think that's a winning strategy, but I also think that that's what makes the Call of Duty franchise more valuable. So make it available on Nintendo, make it available on PlayStation, make it available on Steam, and, you know, whatever else there is, whatever other systems come out, also PC if I didn't say that. But here's the main item that I want to point out. If Microsoft makes Call of Duty permanently available to other platforms and also focuses their legal strategy on mobile, I think they win. Now, Microsoft has been shy of saying that they're going to make their platform permanently available on other platforms. I think they should really do it, because I don't see a strategy with Call of Duty where you start taking it off, at least Sony. but so far they've just offered the 10-year contract. But I think that they just need to just make it completely just take that argument off the table for the FTC by just making it completely available forever. I understand why there's risks in doing that. I get it, but I think they're going to have to do that. Now, Microsoft did come out and say that they will work with the European regulators, and so if 10 years is not enough, they'll work with them. They'll figure something out. They just don't want to say forever. Fine. Even say 25 years. I know that that might be a little bit too high, but essentially what I'm saying is you're going to have to do something more than 10 years to get this across the finish line, in my opinion. And I do believe that Microsoft is already signaling that they're willing to do whatever it takes in this situation. And so just make it permanently available. Get that discussion point off the table. And now this is just a reminder of what the FTC said. Recall, guys, the FTC alleged that the acquisition would be illegal because it would give Microsoft the ability to control how consumers access Activision's games beyond the Xbox consoles and subscription services. I just made a point where that doesn't make sense because the whole value of Call of Duty, at least, is the community, and the fact that the community is so large gives them a real consumer monopoly in this space. And so you don't want to reduce the size of the community here, at least in my opinion. So they say that Microsoft could raise prices or degrade Activision's content for people who don't use this hardware, or even cut off access to the games. But the thing is, they're not providing any evidence to this. This is such high-level criticism of the deal. And, if you always approach deals with this could happen, that could happen without really showing any evidence, you're sort of not going to allow any deal to go through. And so I just think they lose in court unless they can really point to a situation where that actually happened in the past. And the FTC did try to point to a situation, but the European Commission came out and countered what the FTC was saying by saying that that never actually happened in the first place. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just watch the previous video that I had. I'll link it at the end of this video on the European Commission's refutation of the FTC claims. And so here's what the FTC came out and said just this past week. So they said that they're going to stand by their case. And so here's their quote. This $69 billion acquisition would give Microsoft the means to harm competition in multiple fast-growing gaming markets. We are confident in our case and look forward to presenting it at trial. Now, look, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt because my money's on the line here too, right? So I want to know, where is their confidence coming from? Because everything that I've seen thus far, it doesn't make sense. Now, I do agree that they could potentially raise prices, but I just don't think it makes a lot of sense to raise prices because I think the better way to do it, and the way that Call of Duty's been doing it, is instead of raising prices, they're just making updates and releasing a new Call of Duty game every year. And I think that's the move, right? That's how you make your user base continue to purchase the game over and over again every year. Don't raise the prices, just give them more value. And I think that Activision has been doing well in that area. In fact, you hear people sometimes complain. They're like, hey, every year they're putting out this new game, but as much as they want to complain, they always go out and buy the game as well. And so who's the winner here? It's Activision. And so, of course, Microsoft came back to that and said that the acquisition of a single game by a third-place console manufacturer cannot upend a highly competitive industry. And this is particularly so when the manufacturer has made it clear that it will not withhold the game. I think that comment wins them this deal. In fact, I'm actually thinking about increasing my position as I learn more and more about what the arguments are back and forth. But, that's not a recommendation for you guys to invest in this at all. Or if you are invested in it, it's not a recommendation for you to increase your position either. This is just kind of like what I'm thinking in terms of what this all looks like to me right now. And here's a little bit more information on the Pro Camp. So on Wednesday, the UK's Competition and Markets Authority said that it received an overwhelming majority of emails from the public in favor of the transaction after requesting people's input between October 14th and October 28th. And so, the fact that the public is in favor of this is just another reason why I think the European Authority will approve it. But I really believe that either UK and the European, these are two separate regulators. I do believe that you might not get full approvals until you increase that 10-year availability of or the promise to Sony. And so, like I said, make it 25. Who cares? And so, I probably spelled the word collaborative wrong here, but this is what Microsoft is saying. Even with confidence in our case, we remain committed to creative solutions with regulators that will protect competition, consumers, and workers in the tech sector. And so I love this collaborative attitude, because what Microsoft is really doing here is they're saying, listen, regulators, tell us what your concerns are, and we will work with you to come up with solutions. But effectively, don't stop this deal from happening. Work with us. You guys are the government. Make it so that, you guys come out on the winning side. Take credit for it even. Just say, listen, we as regulators made sure that this deal went through while protecting the competition, consumers, and workers in the tech sector. And I'm sure Microsoft would be more than willing to just give the regulators credit for that so long as the deal closes. And so Activision was a little bit stronger in their response. And so Activision's CEO came out and said there is no sensible, legitimate reason for our transaction to be prevented from closing. And so he's being very strong on this one. And I think that's the right move. Make Microsoft be very cordial and willing to work with the regulators. Make Activision, the team that's being acquired, be the aggressive one and being like, listen, we are being acquired, we want to be acquired, there's no reason why we shouldn't be acquired. I think that's the right move. Microsoft takes the high road, Activision becomes the aggressor in this situation. I think that works, and I think it really goes a long way of swaying the public opinion as well, if that matters. And finally, this article wrote what I think is a big issue for the FTC, and it's the hurdles that they have in this case. And so they just wrote here, the agency faces hurdles in this case because the deal is for a vertical merger, meaning that Microsoft wants to buy a company in its supply chain as opposed to a direct competitor. And so this is where, we always wonder, how is it going to hurt competition? But, more importantly, I just don't see how the FTC makes a case that this transaction will raise prices for consumers. In fact, as I was recording this, I kind of now see a case where it could potentially raise prices for consumers. But once again, Microsoft can really retort that by just saying, hey, it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to raise prices. Activision has never really raised prices. I don't know if Activision has. You guys let me know if Call of Duty's prices have gone up over time. But it just doesn't make sense. We want more people to play this, not less. The value in the community is more people playing the game, more time on the game. And so Microsoft or Activision makes their money by releasing a new title every year, as opposed to increasing the price by 20 or 30% every year. Why disallow people from playing your game and then, they spend more time on another franchise? That doesn't make sense. Make them want to play your franchise, make them have access to your franchise, just re-release a new game every year. Now, I understand that people might not necessarily be able to buy a new game every year, but I think it's an easier case to make by saying that you're going to release a new game every year at a lower price or the same price, and people continue to buy, because I think most people can afford at least one new game a year, as opposed to people being able to afford a $200 game. And so that's how I think about it. You guys let me know how you think about it. But there's a huge risk here that I really like to point out, and it's a risk for myself as well. If you're going to try to purchase this opportunity, you have to be aware of it. And that risk is that if this transaction falls or fails, I think that if you value this company based on a free cash flow per share net valuation, so net of stock-based compensation, you have to value this company somewhere around $60 per share. Well, if the current share price is closer to $80 per share, it's got a long way to fall before it gets down to $60 per share. So there is a ton of downside if this transaction does not get approved. And so although I'm a bull on this transaction, I have to be very sensible and tell you what I really think about what Activision is worth. I don't think Activision is worth $95 per share. I think Activision is worth somewhere around $60 per share, and the market could very well trade at around $40 per share because they see sort of risks in the deterioration of revenue for Activision, as we've seen in the past couple of quarters. And so I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you guys think on this transaction. Is this something you're investing in? Are you staying on the sidelines? What do you think about the FTC's case? And what do you think about Microsoft's case? And so I'll leave it there. And if you didn't see that previous video on the European Commission refuting the FTC's claim, that video is right here.